Hello, welcome to the Pillow Talk podcast. I'm Will Beck. I'm your host. And today we have on the podcast Dr. Whitney Roban. Whitney is a sleep expert and she's a founder of Solve Our Sleep. And she's going to solve all of our sleep problems today. So Dr. Roban, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
How much sleep did you get last night?
Last night was a good typical night for me. I feel good today. Last night I got 8 hours, 11:30 to 7:30.
So is that your regular 11:30, 7:30? Do you always operate on those hours?
I try. That's pretty much what works for me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my goal is always 8 hours. Honestly, don't always get it. Even sleep experts have bad nights of sleep for various reasons. But, I feel really good today. When I get my 8 hours, I'm at the top of my game.
So your kids, are they kind of like the cobbler with the kids having bad shoes? Are they good sleepers or are they bad sleepers? Like, how does that work out?
They're actually really good sleepers. So my kids now are 17 and almost 20. And they have just, unfortunately for them, grown up with somebody who's talked about sleep all the time. I always say as a parent, argue with me. I'm all for good, conversation. Just don't argue with me about sleep. So the older one's a gamer, right? So that's hard because he's on tech all the time. He's getting his degree in game design. And the younger one's a competitive basketball player at a prep school. So sleep is really important for everybody, but I can always find what's important to you and make it relatable to sleep.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So what does your typical night routine look like? Like, how do you prepare to go to sleep, go to bed?
Mm-hmm. I love my routine. It's funny, when people talk about people who have insomnia, they really dread the nights, or parents who have kids that don't sleep. They dread going into those evening hours. I can think about sleep and during the day, and I can't wait to go to sleep. And a lot of that has to do with routine, which a lot of people don't have. And I started about an hour before bed, and it's always a hot bath or shower, which is very relaxing for me in the mind. I kind of go through my thoughts and processes through the day so they don't intrude at night. And the warm bath or the shower raises your body temperature when you're in it, but then it decreases your body temperature when you get out. And what that does is increase your melatonin production. So I always recommend kind of pre-routine, taking a hot bath or shower is really good to get your melatonin to start increasing.
So the decrease in body temperature is what stimulates the melatonin.
Right. Melatonin is from body temperature and light and dark.
Okay. So if I go into a hot tub and come out, does that have that same kind of effect?
Yeah, but I wouldn't go into a super, super hot tub, but more warm is good. And, and anything also that you find relaxing. So a lot of people do find hot tubs or baths really relaxing. That's the key to it all. Whatever you want to do, I'll give recommendations, but it's whatever you find relaxing that will calm your mind and body before bed.
So what about like an ice bath? Will that have a cooling effect, or is that not going to do it?
Not a good idea. And that's really not going to be relaxing for most people.
So will that have a counter effect? Will that raise the body temperature?
Yeah, it will raise the body temperature.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. So let's see. So that's the routine. Do you wash your face, go through a kind of normal, do you have a skincare routine that you do too? Is that all part of?
Yes, I was just on a podcast about beauty sleep. So skincare is really important because our skin is most permeable from 9 to 11 at night. So you want to make sure you're using all of your moisturizers and all that because it gets deep into the skin at that hour. And then I go into bed. I use a lavender spray in my room. I love that. There's no real science behind it, but it's relaxing for me. Do some yoga stretches, which are really great. Like legs up the wall is a great pose before you go to bed at night.
What is legs up the wall?
Legs up the wall. You're just laying on the floor and you're putting your legs directly up the wall, like at a 90-degree angle. Okay. And any kind of stretching that feels good for you that will relax the muscles. And then by the time I get into bed, then I do some journaling. So whatever, I said in the bath, sometimes maybe I'll journal or after that. And, the number one cause of sleep problems, behavioral sleep problems. So I'm a clinical psychologist. We're not talking about like an apnea or a restless leg, which are medical issues, but behavioral, the number one cause of those is anxiety and stress. And that's why the whole key to all of this is relaxing our mind and body. So what you want to do is any of those negative thoughts or anxious thoughts or like to-do list thoughts that might intrude into your mind when you're falling asleep, or let's say if you wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning, you can't get back to sleep, journaling them out before bed, getting them on paper is getting the thoughts out so they're least likely to intrude when you're going to sleep. So whatever is helpful for you, for your brain to process those thoughts before you go to sleep, because what most of my clients or people I talk to about sleep will tell me or ask me is, why is it that I don't think about this during the day? And then I get into bed, it's quiet, and then my mind starts going a mile a minute about all those negative things. So you want to get that out before you actually start trying to fall asleep.
So for a lot of people, just the worries that they have about the whole world is like, oh, they're starting to hit them at night. They don't have anything else to think about.
Right.
So it's like attacks them.
Yep.
And your process for getting that off of the plate is just write it down.
Pen to paper, the old-fashioned way, not in your notes app on your phone, because you don't want your phone in your room. You don't want to be on tech. Just get out a pad and pen and write it out.
Yep. And then is the yoga that you do, is that part of that kind of like de-anxiety process? Or is that like have some other physical help to it? Well, what's the purpose of the yoga?
It's both. I mean, it's stretching and it's getting your muscles relaxed, which is great. But one of the great things that I learned in yoga many years ago was yoga breathing. And the breaths really, really help. And it taught me not just for sleep, but in any kind of anxious moment, how to calm down. And it's, 4, 7, 8 breathing that is really, really helpful. So you breathe in through for 4 counts. You hold for 7 and you breathe out through your mouth for 8. So I'll do that while I'm practicing doing the yoga stretches. And it's not a whole real yoga practice. You don't want it to last all that long, but anything that you find very grounding and calming to your mind and your body.
So tell me more about the 4, 7, 8 breathing. So it's 4 seconds of breathing in.
Through your nose with your mouth closed.
Okay. And then 7 of just holding it. Yeah. So not exhaling at all, just
right.
And then 8 seconds of like pushing that air all the way out.
Just opening your lips a little bit and pushing the air
out. Is that out through your mouth?
Yes, it's out through your mouth. Yep. So that's what's really popular. It's been around forever. And then there's also square breathing, which is popular. And really it just depends what's most comfortable for somebody. And square breathing is just 4, 4, 4, and 4. So you're breathing in for 4. You're holding for 4, you're breathing out for 4, and then you're resting for 4. That's another very popular way to calm the body.
And how does that help you out? Like, what does that do for you?
You find when you're anxious, and a lot of people get anxious right before bed, or they're not anxious until those thoughts start going through their mind. Your brain controls your body. So when your brain starts to get anxious, your body starts to also. And we tend to have very shallow, quick breaths. And we don't even realize we're doing it. The second you get nervous, you start to change your breathing. So when you're breathing that way, it calms the central nervous system. And it actually just really feels good and relaxes you. But there's 2 parts. I'm trained as a cognitive behavioral psychologist. And that really is why CBTI, or cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, works so well, because there's 2 parts to being a good sleeper. Outside of all the sleep hygiene and all that stuff that you hear all the time, it's really, you have to have your mind calm and your body calm, both parts.
Yeah, the breath part of it is something I've been thinking about a lot lately. I went to Hawaii a few weeks back, maybe a month back, and we did yoga every morning, and we were working on some breathing exercises during yoga. And I was like, I feel so good when I'm doing that.
Isn't it amazing how it's an immediate effect? Yeah.
And then you combine that with, I started reading this book called Breath. I don't know if you've read that book.
I know, but I haven't read it.
But it was so fascinating. And I am a natural mouth breather. I've been like made fun of my entire life for like having my mouth hang open like Napoleon Dynamite everywhere I go. And so I was like, I'm going to try to breathe through my nose. And I saw these like potential health effects of it. And I was like, man, this sounds awesome, And so I've been trying to breathe through my nose and just take deep breaths. And then also like I never thought about the value of the exhale. I just thought I wanted to get as much oxygen in as possible. But like learning that like some of that oxygen is like pulled in through the body actually through the exhale, like that's how you use some of it. And I was like, wow, like I don't know. I never thought about the exhale part of it, but it's interesting that you talk about doing that for longer than the actual breathing in.
Yeah. And did you put it together with maybe you should try that before sleep because it felt so good to you?
Yeah. Like I try to be calming, and then like I started using the tape on my mouth. Yeah. Because I wanted to like really focus on the nose throughout the night, but I've felt dramatically healthier and higher energy since I've been doing that. It's been like a real key. So I'm like, breathing.
There's something to it.
So I think one of the problems that people have with sleep is they always want to fall asleep faster. Are there any kind of easy tips or techniques for like increasing somebody's ability to get to sleep faster?
Yeah, it's really, most people take between 5 to 10 minutes to fall asleep. So we shouldn't if you get into bed and you immediately pass out, it probably means you're sleep deprived. You should really drift off slowly and peacefully to sleep. So we don't have to, it's not a race to fall asleep. But after, a half hour or so, then that can start to get frustrating. So 5, 10, even 15 minutes is totally normal. And again, it's focusing on the mind and body. So whatever feels like it's preventing you from falling asleep, if it's taking a long time. So there's cognitive distractions to use. And then there's breath work and muscle relaxation work that you can do to relax yourself and try to get to sleep.
So from a cognitive distraction, that's like making it so your brain isn't focused on those thoughts. How are you suggesting people do that?
Right. So did your parents ever talk about like counting sheep when you were little?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the old-fashioned way that all it really is to distract your mind from all those thoughts that, again, you didn't process during the day that are coming in and intruding when they shouldn't be. So the most popular thing I recommend is something I call the ABC game. And it's really simple, as A is apple, B is banana, C is car. And you go through the whole alphabet, thinking of a letter with a word for every letter. And when you get to Z, you don't say, oh God, I didn't fall asleep. You start again. Now I work with people of all ages. So I use the simple ABC game for younger kids. It's sometimes not distracting enough for adults. So for kids, maybe high school and above, and adults, I'll tell them to theme it. So maybe it will be boys' names, or I'll the positive word game. A is awesome. B is beautiful. And it makes it just a little more difficult. You really just want to try to get your brain to not think those negative thoughts. And it's, really just the same thing as any other kind of distraction. Somebody once asked me, can I do like math equations? And I said, yeah, that wouldn't be relaxing for me. That would be more anxiety provoking, but whatever. Focus your mind off of those negative thoughts and bring it into something that's repetitive and maybe a little boring, so your brain calms down.
So I have been doing this thing, and I do it pretty much every night, where I put a podcast on a sleep timer for 10 minutes. So after 10 minutes, the podcast turns off. But I put the podcast my phone under my pillow.
Okay.
You're probably like hating all this being close to my phone and stuff. But I put it under my pillow, and then the pillow blocks out the sound, so my wife can't hear it. And I have it on super low, but then it comes through the pillow when my ear's on it, so I can hear it.
Okay.
And I just listen to something that like my mind's not thinking about any of my day. I'm like listening to a basketball podcast, usually the Low Post, and I'm asleep.
That's great.
Every night,
If that works for you, that's excellent. The Calm app has a lot of bedtime stories. Somebody just alerted me to the guy from Bridgerton that's doing one. And so I put that out to all my followers on social media. Try that. His voice is very, nice and soothing. And if that works for you, I recommend using not your phone, but maybe a Google Home or Amazon Alexa instead. So if you do wake up in the middle of the night, you're not going to start checking social media or go on your phone.
The nice thing is it's buried under my pillow and I can't find it. So what do you do if you get to that, like 30 minutes in bed and like you feel like those social distortions aren't, or the cognitive distortions or whatever distractions aren't working, what do you do?
Yeah. So there's something in this CBTI, the cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. It's a rule called the 30-30 rule. And after 30 minutes, if you're starting to get stressed and you're not falling asleep and you don't feel like sleep is coming, you're not going to will yourself to sleep. So, if you have that clock and you're looking at it, counting the minutes, and you're saying, I have to sleep, and you're having all these negative sleep thoughts, what's going to happen tomorrow? I'm not going to, feel well. I have a big, presentation to do, whatever. You have to get up out of bed, because what you don't want to happen is to start to have this negative sleep association with your bed. Remember how I said, like, I get excited about my routine. My bed is a positive, happy place for me, and I can't wait to get in it at night. For many people, it's not.
So when you're not positive, you get out of there. Like, hey, I need to have that negative association with the kitchen or something.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you don't want to eat, but yeah.
No eating.
Yeah. Unfortunately, eating's not a great thing to do then. So the thing I recommend, I call a sleep oasis. So have something maybe outside of your room, if you have the space, or a corner of your bedroom, if you don't, and set it up before you go to sleep with all the things that you love that are relaxing. So maybe that is a room spray, a book, that's something that smells nice, a book, some relaxing music that you can turn on, a weighted lap blanket, whatever is good and relaxing for you. And it's going to be waiting there. You're not going to fall asleep in your sleep oasis, but you're going to use that to calm down and get those thoughts of not falling asleep out of your mind. And reading is a great thing to do on a traditional old-fashioned book, not one of your tech, and get your eyes tired and get your brain distracted, and then get into bed after about another 30 minutes and try to fall asleep again.
Yeah, reading works for me as long as it's not Harry Potter.
Right.
I get sucked into Harry Potter. I can't put it down. Still.
That's the problem with you reading books that are really interesting to you. So it has to be something that is a little boring.
Yep. Let's see. How important is like the consistency of going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time? Like, is that like a make or break thing? Like biologically, do our bodies just get so used to that they operate way, way better? Or?
Yeah, I love, Will, that you're even asking that and think that that's the case, because most people do not understand how important that is, consistency with sleep schedules. And I've been asked, I do workshops every day for schools and corporations and wellness companies. And I've been asked so many times, well, what's more important, going to bed at the same time or waking up the same time? And the answer is surprising. It's actually waking up the same time every day. Our bodies thrive on a consistent sleep schedule, and that has to do with our sleep-wake cycle, our circadian rhythm. And you'll have a much easier time falling asleep if you go to sleep about the same time every day. However, if you have a bad night of sleep and then you decide to sleep in, that totally messes up the circadian rhythm, your sleep-wake cycle for that day. And then you could perpetuate this vicious cycle by having trouble falling asleep the next night at the same time because you slept in. So even on a bad night of sleep, and it happens again to all of us, you should have your alarm set for the same time, get up, push through. If you're having a tough afternoon, maybe take a quick nap in the early afternoon and try to get to sleep the same time. So consistency in sleep schedule is key to being a great sleeper.
So as the parent of a teenager, I have a 14-year-old, and she has to wake up at 7 a.m. every day for school. She's a really quick get her ready. She's not messing around with her hair for 2 hours. She's like in and out, So as her dad, she wants to sleep in till 10:30 on a Saturday. I mean, is that a bad thing? Does that mess up that rhythm?
Unfortunately, it does. And I get so many eye rolls from the kids in schools when I do the workshops or when I talk to athletes who want to sleep in on the weekends too, where they think for a big game. And there's something called social jet lag. So if we've all experienced jet lag now that we're traveling, maybe we're back to experiencing it again. And it's that kind of groggy, nauseous headache feeling that you get after traveling through time zones. And that's how you'll feel on Monday morning by quote unquote catching up on sleep. Sleep debt takes a long time to catch up, and you're not just going to be able to do it overnight. And it's going to mess up your sleep cycle. So you might get more sleep on the weekend, but then Monday you're going to go back to having a hard time falling asleep Sunday night. So I recommend to everybody, but particularly the teens. Like when I do have the teens fill out sleep logs, it's usually they're getting like 5 to 6 hours during the week. And then on the weekends, they're logging 11, 12 hours. And they think that's great. And unfortunately, it's not so great.
Yeah. So one night of catching up doesn't actually catch you up.
No, it doesn't. And it messes you up for your circadian rhythm.
For the next night.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't know if you are super familiar with basketball. I know you mentioned you have a son that plays.
Yeah.
But when people go to the free throw line, most people have a routine where they do the exact same movements, same number of dribbles. There's a player for the Utah Jazz. He used to like wipe his face a couple times every time, like all kinds of like certain things. But they feel like if they have that exact same routine, they're going to be like way more successful. Should sleep be like a free throw routine where we're like tricking our body into like doing the movement without even thinking about it?
I actually love that analogy. Well,
you can steal it.
So thank you. I'm going to use that. It's how I describe sleep routines is it's the brain, the actual routine in itself, the behavior is telling the brain to tell the body it's time for sleep, because our body is habitual and we remember things that way. And I think besides the superstition, which I think a lot of the players use for doing that before their routine, before the free throw, what it's doing is it's alerting the brain and the body, this is what we're about to do. And it knows, it goes into that hyper focus because it knows I'm going to wipe my face 2 times. I'm getting ready to do a free throw. And that's so, second nature to them. And that's the same thing with sleep. I always tell the story of my older son. When he was little, I would know him. You would never think seeing him that it was time for bed. He was running around, hyper, but I knew it was time to go to sleep. And we had the same routine. And I would carry him into his room. And I would take his hand and turn down the light and close his blinds and get his little stuffed animal. And as soon as we started doing that, he started yawning. It was a Pavlovian response. It was the signal. As soon as those behaviors happened, his brain and body knew what to do. It was time for sleep.
It's pretty neat how like the biology of our bodies is just like, boom. We're so like manipulatable. But it's a cool thing when we understand how to like, I don't know, how to manipulate ourselves.
Creatures. We do, we thrive on that. And it's calming too. It's anxiety, it lowers our anxiety when we do the same things every day. Another thing I tell parents is to have that consistency in your family at night, or even with couples, to kind of have the same routine to alert everybody in the family that it's time for sleep. Then you expect it. You psychologically expect it, and then you physically, your body expects it, and bodies thrive on that consistency.
So one of the things you were talking about earlier when we were talking about showering before bed, that we get out, we're then colder, that being colder produces melatonin. What are your thoughts about people just like taking melatonin tablets or other sleep aids like that? Like, is that helpful? Or?
Yeah, I've been talking a lot about melatonin. That's probably another whole podcast. So, quickly, the good news with melatonin is that there's really no research to show it's harmful. So any of the listeners out there that are taking it, and probably a lot are, since sales have skyrocketed during the pandemic, there's really no research to show that it's harmful, which is great. But the bad news is that that's for short-term use. It wasn't meant to be used every single day for the rest of your life. And it's really meant to get your sleep cycle consistent. So for night shift workers or people suffering from jet lag, it's not really supposed to be used. It's not a sleep aid to make you just sleepy and fall asleep every night. It's supposed to get your sleep-wake cycle on track. So there's no research to show it's harmful, but there's really no research in the long-term effects. So doctors don't really recommend it longer than 3 months. And
so it's really just like a transition period, like, oh, I'm recovering from jet lag, or I like switch shifts on my job or something like that. You can kind of like
need help with your natural secretion of melatonin. But what most people do is they would have natural secretion of melatonin. However, their sleep cycles are all messed up. They're in their rooms with the lights on social media, with their phones in front of their faces. So of course, melatonin is not going to be and then they're taking the melatonin pill in order to get it more. So, and I think for kids also, you're teaching them that, that they need to take a pill, a gummy, or whatever it is. So it's not physically habit forming. But psychologically, once people start taking it, they think they can sleep without it. So it can become psychologically habit forming, not physically. So it's easy. The good thing is it's not like real sleep medications where it's going to be. And really only the recommendation is to start at maybe 0.5 or 1 milligram. And the highest you should go is 3. And if you go into your local drugstore, most of the melatonin out there is 5 milligrams and higher. And after that, there are side effects that you can feel, like a grogginess the next day, or maybe heightened anxiety, nightmares of very, very vivid dreams. So short-term, low milligrams, okay.
The interesting thing I think about melatonin when you're talking about how people are using it is that it's like fighting the science rather than using the science. It's like, hey, I'm on my phone and I'm not able to produce melatonin. So instead of producing it, I'm going to like force it and fight against nature. Whereas if you're like taking the bath or like being in a dark place or whatever, you're like using the nature like in the way it was intended,
Exactly. That's a good point. I always say the sleep affects everything that we do. It's literally the single most important behavior we engage in on a daily basis. And you could fix it for free. It's something you need to do every day. It's all in your house, your sleep environment, your routines. It's just up to you. So why don't people use that, right? Like for sports, it's going to end with such great results. It's enhancing performance. We know that, scientifically proven. Why don't we do it? Because it's
kind of like that movie Limitless, when they're like, here's this pill you can take and it makes you smarter and more like attuned and more able to focus and accomplish all these things. It's like, well, that's just kind of like sleeping a lot.
Right. Like, the great thing about it is it's not a pill and there's no side effect, right?
Totally.
We could all do it. It's just that we don't prioritize it. And that's really changed in society, which I think is great. And my goal and my professional, mission is to just raise the awareness of the importance of sleep. But when I do these workshops, everyone wants to get into the house. Like you said, how do I sleep quicker? How do I do this? But how is the second part of a sleep journey? The first part is the whys. If you're not prioritizing it, you're not going to do anything I say. So why bother? You have to make it a priority. It's not easy to turn off those phones an hour before bed, turn off those video games, not, drink alcohol before bed or eat before bed, or all those things that we do that don't lead to healthy sleep. If you're going to stop them, if you understand why it's so important. If not, you're going to keep doing them because you prefer to do that over what I'm going to tell you to do.
Yeah, it's a matter of discipline, and it's hard to discipline yourself and be like, hey, I'm going to like deny myself right now so I can reap the reward tomorrow.
Right.
And frankly, most people can't do that.
Yes, until they understand. And the thing about sleep is that it affects everything we do from head to toe. So I could convince somebody, no matter what their passion is, that healthy sleep will make it better. So if you're an athlete, healthy sleep will be better. If you're a student, healthy sleep will make you do better in school. If you're a CEO, your company's going to do better. Your employees are going to do better with healthy sleep. So it just says, let somebody with whatever their passion is, understand the influence of sleep on that. And then it's a no-brainer. Then it's easy for them to make the changes.
So we've talked a lot about that last hour right before bed in terms of how that affects us to sleep. But are there some things that we can do throughout the day, earlier in the day, that affect our sleep 12 hours later that we should be doing?
Yeah, definitely. So let's start from the morning, right? So we talked about getting up at, the same time every day, especially after you've had a really bad night of sleep. So how should you start your day? First thing, drink a glass of water when you wake up because we get dehydrated when we sleep.
Because our mouths are open, getting that cotton mouth. That's why I'm closing it.
Nose, right. Open the windows, get natural sunlight, or get out and take a walk, get some fresh air and get some sunlight, and do something as part of your morning routine that you absolutely love. We need a motivator to get out of bed in the morning. Not everybody loves how their day is going to start. They're not looking forward to their day. So something, your coffee, I make a latte for myself in the morning. I love that. I look forward to it. Whatever it might be, spending time with a significant other or your children, something special that will motivate you to get out of bed, get fresh air and start your day. Try to work out early, not late.
Sorry, I was going to, the natural sunlight piece of it, is that to kind of like start the circadian rhythm?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yep. To reset your circadian rhythm. Exactly. So a big problem, people were really, their sleep was all over the place during the pandemic, during lockdown, because we're basically inside all the time, just in dark, right? So everybody's sleeping, and we didn't have to get up and go to work and commute, and the kids weren't going to school. So everybody's sleep wake cycle was totally out of whack, and waking up and just at least getting some sunlight and fresh air is really helpful to reset your circadian rhythm for the day.
So it says to the body, wake up.
Turn off that melatonin.
Yeah. And then that way, by the time we need to use it again later on, it's ready to actually shut off at that point.
Right. So we want our sleep drive. It increases. Adenosine builds up throughout the day, and that increases our sleep drive. So we want to be tired by the nighttime. So starting fresh by getting out will help you get to that point later in the day. And you don't want that sunlight late in the day.
So if people are struggling with insomnia, is it important for those people to get exercise? Like, will that help them sleep better at the end of the day? Is that?
Yeah, exercise is really important for everything, but for sleep for sure. But not at the end. We don't want to work out within 2 hours of going to bed. So, strenuous workout. So you're really want to try to get your workout in earlier in the day.
So if I do a late workout, that kind of turns my body back on and says, hey, wake up, right?
Yep.
So if I do an earlier workout, then it like makes my body tired and I'm more likely to be able to go to sleep, but it doesn't leave me like turned on or at the end.
Right. And it raises your body temperature significantly, and it takes time for the body to cool. Again, we want the body to cool before with the melatonin. It releases endorphins, which don't make us sleepy. So all those things, working out is great. You just have to really try to fit it in earlier. And then eating, like you had said in the middle of the night, oh, should I eat? So we don't want our bodies to have to work harder while we sleep when they need to. And digestion happens while we sleep. And that's another big reason.
Turns the body on. Yeah.
Yeah. And people wake up with digestive issues. So if you can, it's better to eat earlier in the day, maybe a bigger lunch and smaller meals. And then if you have to eat before bed, just snacks, not a big heavy meal, no, chips or chocolate. And there's sleep promoting foods that I recommend, a whole list of them. So things like whole wheat crackers and cheese, or turkey, a glass of milk, sleepy time tea. There are things that you can, almonds, you could snack on if you're hungry. So I always say, don't go to bed hungry. Try not to eat before bed, but you don't want to go to bed hungry and get woken up in the middle of the night because you're hungry. So snack on something that's sleep promoting and just light as early, before bed as possible.
What about a glass of water before bed? Is that a good idea, bad idea?
It's better to dehydrate. So it's 8 hours of sleep and 8 glasses of water throughout the day. But you don't want to do that all right. Oh, I didn't drink my eight glasses and do it right before, because then you'll wake up to use the restroom all night.
Yeah. So maybe you wait a couple hours.
Yeah.
Get all that water hydration in before 8 o'clock or something.
Yeah,
and then
do it throughout the day. So you're not, backloading at night, and it's to stay hydrated for sure.
Yep. When should people last have caffeine? Like, when should they cut that out?
So caffeine stays in our body for about 5 to 7 hours. So figure out what time you want to go to sleep and work backwards. So I always recommend, lunch and then cut your caffeine. And at night, make it part of sleepy time teas. Any kind of, chamomile herbal teas are a really nice thing. It's relaxing. Make that part of your pre-bedtime routine. And people find that really relaxing. But a late day cup of coffee to get through, what they call the witching hour. If you're well rested, you shouldn't need that. And if you are, I'd rather you take an earlier nap than a late day caffeine.
Take a 10-minute nap, and then instead of having a cup of coffee.
Yeah, anything less than 30 minutes. You don't
want to put a bed in my office so I can take those late day naps if I need to. I don't do it a lot, but every once in a while. Yeah,
every once in a while you need it, and it's okay. You just want to limit it. 2 rules to napping is you want it to be 30 minutes or less, just so you don't go into your deep sleep. If you ever napped, you didn't set an alarm and you figured, I'll sleep for 10 minutes, but you sleep for 45, an hour, and then you feel worse when you wake up. And you don't want that to happen. So you just want a little boost of energy to get through the day. So 30 minutes or less, and try the naps to end before 3 in the afternoon.
That used to be my Sunday afternoon problem, is that I would take a nap for 2 hours and then
Yeah.
every Sunday night not be able to go to sleep.
Right. Exactly. So that's really what you want to avoid. People always ask me, are you against naps? And I said, no, I'm very pro nap, just doing it at the right time for the right amount of time.
Mm-hmm. So what should we do to our bedroom to make our bedroom a better environment for sleep?
Mm-hmm. There's so many things. So 3 rules with a sleep environment: it's dark, quiet, and cool. So you want to make sure that you have really good blackout shades on your windows. If you don't have that, a dark sheet, you just want to make sure it's dark in your room. If there's bright light coming in, cover it or get a sleep mask and use that to block out the light.
Mm-hmm.
Quiet is really important. So depending on what, you live in a loud city that's around you, a pet that, a dog that barks and keeps you up, teenagers maybe that are loud and stay up later than you, a snoring spouse, whatever it is, you want to make sure it's quiet. So earplugs, maybe get, a white noise app on your Google Home. That's really important. And then cool is so important. Most people sleep with their rooms way too hot. So most people tell me they sleep with their rooms between like 70 and 72 degrees, sometimes even hotter. And that's not really conducive to good sleep. So you want your room to be between 60 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit.
So that's cold.
It's cold. And I've heard a lot of people, their opinions differently about that. And for me personally, during the day, my body runs cold. So I keep my house at 72 degrees during the day, which most people will say is too hot. So it's not as if I'm always hot. But when I get into bed at night, I turn my temperature down to 64 degrees. Been doing it for years, and I never wake up hot. And it's really, really helpful for sleep. I've changed so many people's ways about that. And a lot of, men have thanked me for it, because the women they share their bedroom with don't want it to be so cold. And I've convinced them that it's better for both of them. And they do so more.
Well, I think one of the number one complaints that we hear about sleep problems is people sleep too hot. So they're always wanting like sleep cooling products. It's like, well, why don't you just turn the air conditioning down a little bit? And then that solves a lot of that problem, Is there like a biological reason why we need to sleep in a colder atmosphere?
Well, we get woken up when we're uncomfortably hot. So we just, anything that will keep us and our bodies cool is important.
I had a friend tell me he thought it was because we used to sleep in caves. I was like, I don't know if that's true. Maybe it is. A dark, quiet, and cool in a cave,
Yeah, exactly. They didn't have sleep problems back then.
Yep. And then darkness is favorable to sleep because it like starts that melatonin process. What about people that snore? Is there a way for to help people who are snoring to be able to like allow their partner to have some quiet? I'm asking for my wife.
It's a big issue. I mean, there are things you can do. Most importantly, if you're snoring, it's probably a good idea to get a sleep apnea test. People think it's only men and overweight people that have apnea, and that's actually not true. Many women do have apnea. So getting a sleep test, sleep study would be a good idea. But not drinking before bed. Alcohol can lead to more snoring. Sleeping on your side is better than your back. So back sleeping leads to more snoring. Being overweight, being too hot, getting better exercise, all those things, keeping hydrated, all those things can help, but they're certainly not cures. And for couples, it becomes a point of contention in many marriages, because you resent the person who is keeping you awake, even though because they're not sleeping. But actually, most people that snore, if they have apnea, they're not getting quality sleep either, even though they're not waking up, they're not realizing it, but they're usually the next day very tired because they're waking up throughout the night.
Is it common, do you see, for people to say, hey, I'm going to sleep in a different room then? And does that help?
Yeah, that's actually becoming so common that there are some high-end home builders that are building houses now with 2 master bedrooms. So people say, will say to me, oh, well, I don't think it would be good for my marriage if we sleep in separate bedrooms. However, is it really good for your marriage to be sleep deprived and resent the person that's keeping you awake? Or, everything that sleep, all the negative effects of sleep deprivation, you're more likely to get sick, to suffer from more serious diseases. I know cold and, short-term sickness, but long-term cancer, diabetes, obesity, Alzheimer's, stroke, heart attack, all those things are related to sleep. We don't want that to happen to you or the person you're sharing the bed with. Emotionally, it increases anxiety, depression risks, mental health, and behaviorally being successful, being able to be productive, efficient, being able to focus. Yeah, I can go on and on and on, all those negative things. So yeah, maybe you're sleeping in bed together, but there's going to be so many other repercussions. So some couples just say, until we can figure this out, be in bed, be intimate, do what you do, and then go to your own respective beds just to get a good night of sleep.
And then, sorry, I got distracted.
Thinking about the snoring.
No, it was actually the intimacy part that probably threw me off. I was like, oh yeah, other people's wives are not too tired at night.
Another motivation to get that sleep study done, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
No, for me, actually, one of the things that helped with my snoring the most was switching to the nose breathing instead of the mouth breathing. That totally has shut off the snoring for me. And it's been a huge help. But sometimes my wife and I will just go to sleep at different times, and when we do that, then we'll sometimes sleep in different beds, because when one person's asleep already and you're trying to get to sleep, at least for her, it can be a problem. I can fall asleep whenever. I'm one of my greatest skills is falling asleep.
And that's probably very frustrating to her.
It is. She's jealous. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So what are some of the things that people have wrong about when they think about sleep, that they're like, hey, they don't know what they're talking about, kind of like myths about sleep that aren't quite true?
So I think the greatest myth about sleep is that nothing important happens while we sleep, right? You hear people saying, I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Yeah.
This FOMO that there's more important stuff happening on social media than there is, why should they be sleeping? Plenty of time to sleep later. And so many important things happen while we sleep. So it's really worth it. And we need those 8 hours to get all those processes done. So it's like the 4 R's. It's rest, repair, recovery, and rejuvenation. All those things happen while we sleep. And that leads to results, success, and happiness the next day.
Yeah. I was reading the book While We Sleep, and it talked about how we're actually learning while we're sleeping. Like our brain is putting things into our memory while we're sleeping.
It's so active, right? During REM sleep, all the information you learn during the day goes from short-term memory to long-term memory. And that's so important. We want that information to stick. So you have to go into your deep sleep in order for that to happen. There's so many hormones that is secreted while we sleep. There's the growth hormone, which is really important for building muscles, for actually children just physically growing. For muscles, for cell repair, that all happens while we sleep. The hunger hormones are produced while we sleep. That's why sleep is tied to obesity, because we will have too much of the hormone ghrelin and not enough leptin. Leptin tells us that we're full. Ghrelin tells us to keep eating. So when we're sleep deprived, we're going to keep eating, and we're going to choose unhealthy foods to eat because our body's looking for outside fuel because it doesn't have that. The cortisol, the stress hormone, there's too much cortisol if we're sleep deprived, which leads to anxiety, which leads to skin breakouts. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And most importantly, our immune system gets stronger while we sleep, and it flushes out the toxins. That's why sleep's also related to Alzheimer's. We need to flush out those toxins from our brain. So what happens?
Well, a couple other non-sleep questions for you. One, what's your favorite pillow?
So I use the pillow cube. That has been such a game changer for side sleepers for me. And my son always steals it from me when he comes home from school, because we're both side sleepers at night. That really helped. I had neck pain for a very long time, and that's really helped my neck pain in having the pillow cube to sleep with. I was just at a hotel traveling, and they had the worst, I won't say the hotel chain, but they had the worst pillows. Pillows are so important for sleep. People always, they skimp on things. I would say, don't skimp on something you need to use every single day.
Yeah.
Right. So they skimp on mattresses and pillows and sheets and all these things that can really make great sleep happen. And that's so important.
And then they buy 10 pair of Jordans ones to rotate with all their different outfits.
Right,
it's like,
exactly.
I can't spend $100 on a pillow.
Yeah.
You know?
It's worth it because it's like we said, head to toe. Sleep affects everything the next day. So, you have to really figure out what works for you and then go by the best of it for sleep.
Yep. And then who is your pick to win the NBA finals?
Oh, well, that's a hard one.
I wanted to throw you off with this one.
The Suns.
The Suns, that's a good choice.
Yeah.
You're obviously paying attention. I think they're the favorite.
Mm-hmm.
They're playing really well. Which Avenger do you most relate to?
Oh, my older son is a huge Marvel fanatic. So Iron Man probably, but I love Robert Downey Jr., so I have to say Iron Man. Leader, smart, charming, and enjoys a good challenge, scientist. So yeah, I guess.
Okay. That's a great answer. And then what's your favorite movie?
Oh, I don't know if you know this one. My favorite is Cinema Paradiso. It was back in the 80s. It was a foreign film, very sweet, about a boy who falls in love with film through the eyes of this older man who runs an old cinema in his town. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out.
I am going to check it out. I haven't seen that one, but that sounds great. So, well, I just wanted to end on something light with a few funny questions, but it's been great to have you on. I'm always on the quest for improving my own sleep and working with my kids. I want them to have the right mindset about sleep going into it. So they're not trying to party all the time and cram all this other stuff into life. And they're just enjoying the moments that they do have because they have the energy to participate in everything they're doing and optimizing their life, And so I think sleep is such a huge part of that. So thanks for
big part. And I know you said both your kids play basketball, right?
Yeah. I have 3 kids, all hoopers,
Yeah. So let them know that increased sleep leads to a 9% increase in accuracy of free throws.
Really?
Yeah. And
that is a great stat.
Great statistic. So
9% is it game winning or not?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You miss that extra free throw, game over.
I mean, and that's just, for basketball, but it helps with, runners and their speed and your agility, your reaction time, your decision making, should I pass? Should I drive? So you could really focus on sleep for them with the basketball and all those, analogy and all the sport teams and the NBA teams that have sleep coaches. So important. So you can compare some of important sleep. Maybe you weigh that against, Instagram and social media.
Not very important, those things.
Yeah.
So, well, thanks so much for sharing your knowledge with us. And if you want to find out more about what Whitney's doing, you can go to solvoursleep.com or just Google Dr. Whitney Roban and Solve Our Sleep. She's also Solve Our Sleep on Instagram. And so thanks so much for sharing everything with us and appreciate your time.
Thank you. Stay well.